Okay, so we all know about the IEC, 200 founding members, very excited, it just keeps growing, we love it. Sloan here, Palmer, he's in Washington, D.C., says hello. A lot of good things happening at Anduril. We're going to do another Anduril visit. Speaker Johnson, Mar-a-Lago, a lot of the content that we're forming for all of you in these Pacific Club events presents are around these 5 industries that are growing the GDP. So this is a lot of intelligence that we got directly from the White House and the new administration, so keep an eye on that. We attended the inauguration, and then Kevin, my partner, IEC, and I attended the Crypto Summit. And the reason why we bring these slides is as a reminder to you to the access points that we have in the new admin. So if any of this stuff is compelling to you, follow up with us so we can help guide you into the right access points. In January, we kicked off our Presents program. So thanks to Tom Gibson and Larry Armstrong for opening this idea up of partnering with the Pacific Club. We start with nuclear energy, Valor Atomics, followed by AI for neurological studies, Stanford. And then we followed that with Kevin Roberts of the Heritage Foundation and the crypto Senator Bernie Moreno right here to talk to all of you about insights and opportunities around growth industries. A month ago, we did a fireside chat with Larry Armstrong. Every time I interview somebody, I learn something else, right? He's talking about we're building the ultimate where Malcolm. Think about all your businesses and the things that you're doing, right? We're at that stage of light where everything counts. So we have to think about like the ultimate outcome. And so right after that presentation where I'm facilitating, the next day I just started restructuring my company, which is already growing. And I said, we're not growing to just be KCOM for like the next year and like growing maybe like 5%. How do we become the ultimate? So let's restructure everything that we're doing. We also all did art together. And it's amazing how everyone's art piece was so different than each other, right? So like he gave us clear instructions, but everyone's art was completely different. That was pretty cool. And then I just got back from Venice, Italy, where I was at the Type 1 Venture Summit. This is the leading venture capital firm in all things space. At first I would think like, say space, it's like crypto, like come on, it's never gonna happen. But space is a real thing that I want all of you to be aware of. We're talking about $2 new trillion, $2 new trillion. And none of it has to do with sending people to space, okay? Like space travel is one thing, but when you talk about R&D, you talk about semiconductor research, you talk about healthcare and cancer research, all these things are gonna be happening above orbit, and that's what we learned there, and we're gonna bring them here. It's gonna be really awesome. And then some upcoming events, so we're gonna do something on digital currencies, on artificial intelligence, space, FAA with the whole eVTOLs and getting JetSuite CEO here, as well as Aptera Motors, which I'm excited about, and of course I wanna end with Palmer. I'd be remiss not to mention that we have Speaker Johnson coming next Thursday. The big, beautiful bill got passed in the House and it'll probably go through the Senate. It went from a fundraiser to what I think is going to be more of like a celebration party in Newport Beach on Thursday. So Speaker Johnson's a dear friend. I thank Matt Gunderson, who's here, for making that incredible introduction. And he could not be a more personable dude. Ken Calvert, Congresswoman Young Kim will also be at that event. Gorky, are you here? Can you raise your hand? Gorky, one of the leading cancer researchers, he's the one who's doing the programmatic aspects of mDNA. So when we look at cancer vaccines and cancer treatments, it's all coming from that dude right there for the City of Hope. City of Hope is like a hospital, it's drug discovery, it's everything in one laboratory, okay? So when you're talking about attacking cancer, we're gonna have that deep discussion in a month and we're very grateful. I know you had to go through a lot of loops, right? It's not like, talking to a burrito manufacturer, you're dealing with, no offense, but healthcare is like totally regulated. Burritos, I don't know. And then we got a 2-day summit coming up with Governor of Texas and Byron Donalds, who will be most likely the next governor of Florida. That's coming up at the Montage. I'm excited to bring Aptera here. Okay, so you might have heard of this company. They're crowdfunded. It's a solar electric hybrid, right? So based in San Diego, awesome company, has 50,000 orders. We had this at Palmer's house a little while ago when we had an event. He's one of the orders, of course. So he'll probably be like the first one driving around one, slightly envious, but we're gonna have one here for you to drive, but also talk to the founder about how they took their business to a crowdfunding model and now are going after the entire automotive space. We're hosting Impact in Washington, D.C., October 5th through 8th. Kevin, a bunch of us are gonna be there. It's gonna be absolutely epic. It's where the new frontier meets policymakers, and it'll be like nothing I've ever done. And we got the Hey Adams, and it'll be absolutely awesome. So here are just a few of our speakers, and all in person too. None of this is like Zoom, use their photo and get people there. These are like people that are gonna be there. On that note, I'd like to introduce to you our distinguished speaker for tonight. I've been really excited about this. I first met Scott through a good friend of mine, Shane Mitchell, who I met through Jason Pitkin. He was at a car event with me. I walked right up to him, the most approachable $70 billion CEO I've ever met. Usually it's like layers of officers and police, okay? Like he just walked right up to Scott. Really personable, connected right away. We had some things in common, and then I introduced him to Palmer. We did a great tour. I never know what's gonna come from these meetings with Palmer, right? So like we're sitting in a conference room after touring like all his great new acquisitions, and immediately they got into food and burritos and Palmer's desire of creating a plutonium-based burrito so he could eat as many as possible without gaining any calories. So that was like the first 5 minutes. Imagine what an hour of that was like. It was amazing. So there was a lot of nuggets I got from that too on the work that you're doing. So that was really fascinating. So a little bit about Scott's background, because I think it's important that you know where he comes from. So as a CEO and a member of the board of directors of Chipotle, he was appointed in November of 2024. Prior to that, he held the role of interim CEO and COO since May of 2017. Boatwright was named Nation's Restaurant News Operations Creator of the Year in 2021, as well as to Fast Casual's 2020 Top 25 Executive List. Prior to Chipotle, can anyone guess which fast casual restaurant he was with? Just go ahead.
Arby's.
Arby's. Someone did their homework. Fantastic. 18 years at Arby's. I mean, dude, you look good, man. I mean, good genes, good docs. I don't know. I'm
Reading
thinking
Arby's
genes.
for 18 years.
Yeah, so he most recently served as the Senior Vice President of Operations, where he was responsible for the performance of over 1,700 restaurants in numerous states. Boatwright is a member of the Business Roundtable and the Business Council. He holds a master's degree in business administration from the J. Mack Robinson College of Business at Georgia State University. If you could help me with the Pacific Club Newport Beach, welcome to Mr. Scott Boatwright.
Thank you.
Have a seat, my friend. This is going to be fun.
I don't know how distinguished I am, but I appreciate the welcome. Thank you,
Absolutely.
everyone.
Awesome. Well, looking forward to this. So maybe you could tell everyone a little bit about your background, your journey, how you got to where you're at. Just take us through.
It would take all evening to go all the way through the background, Sinan, but I'll try to be brief. I grew up in what I believe to be humble beginnings in rural Georgia many years ago to two very hardworking parents who believed in education and hard work. And so although these were hard times for our family, we did learn values, we learned work ethic, we learned the value of honesty and integrity and putting in a full day's work. And so my father at points of my childhood would work 7 days a week, 12-hour shifts as a welder, trying to make ends meet. And so I had great role models my whole life and great mentors, a lot of conversation around mentors. But fell into food service when I got home from school. Primary industry where I grew up is tourism. And so I fell into fine dining originally, so think white glove, white tablecloth dining. I was recruited away to a company called RTM in 1996. There are folks in this room that weren't even born in 96. So started out with a company called RTM that owned 800 franchised restaurants. Arby's was the largest restaurant group in the portfolio. Started on that business. We sold that company to Triarch, so Nelson Peltz's group, in 2002. We took that company public in 2005. We bought Wendy's in an all-stock trade in 2008. So we ran both brands as Wendy's Arby's Group. WEN was the ticker, I believe it was. And then we divested the Arby's brand to Roark Capital in 2011. I stayed on the Arby's team as we were coming out of the Great Recession. The brand was in pretty dire straits. Financially, the economic model had been substantially disrupted. Franchisees were on the verge of insolvency. And so we spent most of our time during 11 and 12 trying to figure out how we bring in third-party lenders to support franchise growth and to keep them in business so they can make their bank covenants.
So let me hit on that. Tell us what the transition was like from an Arby's culture to Chipotle. What was that like?
Very different. So we had built, and so we exited that business. Let me step back before I answer that question. Roark Capital bought Arby's for $250 million. So $50 million in EBITDA at a 5 multiple. In 5 years, the brand was generating over $300 million in EBITDA, and the multiple expansion had moved up to 8 or 10. So the value creation that happened in that 5-year window was just extraordinary, which allowed them to buy other brands that they own today, like Dunkin', Jimmy John's, Our Taco, Buffalo Wild Wings, Sonic. I think that's pretty much it in the brand today. I get a call from the founder and CEO of Chipotle, Steve Ells, in 2016, and he convinced me to join the brand that I'd been a fan of for many, many years. As the chief restaurant officer is when I first came in. After several conversations in New York with him, and I came into Chipotle. The brand had, and I'm sure you remember if you're a fan of the brand, Had some missteps back in 2015, 2016.
Yeah.
The market cap had been halved in about 6 months' time.
Right.
When I joined, the market cap of the brand was $9 billion. Today it's close to 70, 68 and a half, I think it is. So
Goodness.
the value creation that's happened at Chipotle in the last 7, 8 years has been extraordinary as well. And the culture was very different. We came from a company of high accountability, great operations, great leadership development organization at Inspire, to Chipotle that was growing too quickly without the appropriate leadership development resources necessary to support the growth. And so what I found was a company of about 1,900 restaurants then with people that had been promoted above their level of competency, or ability, I should say. All very well intended, great values, purpose-driven. I just didn't know how to operate a business at scale.
So tell us about any defining moment or challenge in your career that deeply impacted you, that was like the precipice of who you've become.
There are many of them. I'll tell you, my first year in the Chipotle brand, I thought I was joining this darling of Wall Street, this iconic American brand that had it all figured out. And I just needed to make a few modifications to the operating model to really get it moving forward again. And that's not what I found at all. In the first 12 to 18 months I was in the brand, we were struggling. And we were struggling mightily on a lot of fronts. Supply chain challenges, operational challenges. We were trying to stand up this digital ecosystem that we have today, which is almost a $5 billion component of our company. And so it was fledgling at the time. And so many nights of sleepless nights in Denver, Colorado. A wife who was uncertain of my decision. Luckily, I didn't have children at that time. I couldn't imagine trying to also be a father at that moment. And then I had the guys at Inspire, specifically Paul Brown, who's the CEO there, calling me almost weekly, asking me to come back.
Right.
And so very trying times. I'd made a commitment. I stayed with the commitment. I'm a man of my word. I believe if we don't have our word, then we are on ourselves, or we don't have the character we should to lead large organizations. And so the people in Chipotle at the time needed me, and I stayed on.
So we speak about leadership. Talk about your leadership philosophy on the inside. So how do you define great leadership, particularly in a fast-paced, high-growth environment like Chipotle?
Yeah, I think it's important for leaders to obviously define a set strategy for an organization, create alignment around that strategy and cascade that alignment through an organization, but then internally create a culture of high accountability. And that word is thrown around a lot, and a lot of people use it in a lot of different ways. For me, accountability is very simple. And I talk about this idea of positive personal accountability, not something that is thrust upon someone and they go kicking and screaming, but create a culture where people have this intrinsic motivation to be accountable to the 1 or 2 or 5 things that they're accountable for. And so one of the first things I did in the operational hierarchy of Chipotle is I created a top 5 accountability for every position within the hierarchy. So every individual knew if I do nothing else, I have to execute these 5 things.
Right.
And so that created this culture of accountability that we enjoy today. And I believe it's the best. We have 130,000 team members in the Chipotle family today. I think it's the best operating group of any brand in the country. Full stop. I don't care where you look or where you go. This team is incredible.
Right.
And so accountability and responsibility are 2 different words, and they often are used interchangeably, but they are very different.
Yeah.
If you and I have responsibility for staffing a restaurant or staffing a component of the business, then there's no accountability. There's not one person accountable to that KPI.
Right.
When I tell Sinan, you're accountable to ensure that staff, we share responsibility, you're accountable. Now Sinan knows without any ambiguity exactly what he needs to get done.
Yeah, I did my master's at Chapman in organizational leadership. I remember Mark Meyer, my teacher, saying leadership is action, not position. So it didn't necessarily mean I had to be the founder or CEO to be a leader within my company. And that always stuck on me. So given the fact that you've got 100,000+ employees, how does mentorship and development work throughout the enterprise?
Yeah, so we have moments of development that happen at every stage in the hierarchy. So as soon as you join the Chipotle brand, we put you in an opportunity where we're going to grow and develop you and give you the skill sets necessary to be successful, whether you stay with Chipotle or not. There was an old industry exec many years ago that talked about what if we invest in them and they leave? And the industry leader said, what if we don't and they stay?
That's good.
And that's always resonated with me. And so we invest in the leadership development of all team members that join the brand. And we're growing at such a rapid pace today. We will open a new Chipotle restaurant this year every 24 hours. Woo! And so when you're growing at that scale, you have to have leadership discipline at all levels in the hierarchy. and a mindset that is centered around leadership development so that we have ready, capable leaders to take on the new growth in the organization.
Along those lines on evolution and future vision, Chipotle's undergone a remarkable transformation in recent years. What's next for your brand?
I get this question a lot, and so mostly by buy-side analysts.
Bye.
Which I talk about a lot, or talk to a lot, I should say. The brand is doing well, and we're growing at a pretty quick pace in North America. We have said publicly we can get to 7,000 restaurants in North America, and we're on pace. We're growing at about 8 to 10% annually today. If you truly believe that 7,000 is the number, then you reach a point of maturity in the brand somewhere in year 6 or 7 from today. And so thinking about the growth levers that we will lean into today, the seeds that you have to plant today, that will become the growth levers of the brand in the future 10 years from today. You've got to think different platforms. You have to rethink your technology stack and make sure it's scalable, not only locally but globally. You have to think through what are the layers of growth internationally, what will that look like for the brand? Are there small incubator brands that you can invest in today? Like McDonald's made a strategic investment in Chipotle back in, the early days of the brand.
Right.
Are there other brands like that we can find that have a similar food ethos? Ours is very unique and very special. That have a similar operating model that we believe has upside potential that hasn't valued themselves at Chipotle multiples today, which is hard to do because everyone thinks they can get to the brands we talk to. There are 8 restaurants today. They think we can get to 5,000 at Chipotle's multiple. We're worth $4 billion.
Right. Yeah.
And so we're trying to get past those conversations, get realistic valuations for the companies we can lean into.
Speaking about technology and innovation, tell us a little bit about how technology plays a role in your enterprise within your actual storefronts, whether in menu development, service models. How does that play into your growth strategy, and how is data and AI improving customer experience and operations?
That's a big question, and it's a long one to answer. So one of our core strategies is to amplify technology and innovation for the company. We have been dubbed as a technology company, not a restaurant company in many ways, because of the digital business that we enjoy today. We were the first to go with a digital make line in all restaurants. We built an app internally that has the customization you would find in a Nike app with the convenience you would find in an Amazon app. And so we continue to iterate and refine our process in digital to remove friction for the consumer and create access. And so that's often easily said, very difficult to actually accomplish.
Right.
Our team has done that at scale in a pretty meaningful way. We're continuing to leverage AI, whether that's machine learning or Gen AI, in multiple facets of the business. One example is our hiring assistant. We have Ava Cotto, who does all of our pre-interviews. And so if you apply at Chipotle today, Ava's your first interaction. Ava will gather all of your information. We'll see if you're a good fit for our company and then place you into time slots for interviews with our general managers.
What about your general manager, Tom Ato?
Yes. Or Barbara Koa.
Ooh, that's good.
And so, which has reduced the time to hire from about 75% from 14 days to 3 days, which gives you better access to better talent that doesn't get snatched up before it gets into your doors. And we have a better candidate pool that we're bringing into the organization. We're leveraging AI and video systems, camera systems in restaurant to check out accuracy, speed of service. It does alerting to the above restaurant leadership team to tell them when there's an opportunity. We're leveraging AI machine learning in our scheduling and forecasting model, which takes into account activities in the area, last year's sales numbers. It takes in weather data and then formulates a real-time forecast for the managers so they can prepare accurately for food and deploy labor accurately. We're leveraging AI in our digital ecosystem, and so think customer journeys and funnel conversion. So if we target new lapsed or new lapsed or at-risk consumers within our loyalty platform, how can we create journeys for those that we see at risk to get them to transact?
Right.
And it'll automatically find unique offers based on your user profile. And if you don't transact within 2 weeks or 3 weeks, it'll escalate the offer until you do transact to bring you back into the ecosystem. And that's all done back in by Gen AI. And so I could bring in.
No, this is fantastic. I mean, the one thing that I clued in on is the iteration, and anyone who's building AI within your organization, it's really important to not just hire a developer for a project. It is a nonstop learning environment where you're learning based on the usage to iterate so the experience is better.
That's right.
And that's fantastic. You guys are doing that. So when we were at Palmer's, I know one of the topics that came up was like making America healthy and non-GMO. This is a big deal.
And synthetic beef.
Well, yeah, right? Tell us a little bit about the sustainability and non-GMO efforts of Chipotle, because you guys are one of the first chains to go non-GMO. Why was that important to you, and how do you keep that commitment at a scalable level?
Yes, it was the early days when Steve started the brand in San Francisco, or started in Denver actually, but the idea came from San Francisco when he was at the Culinary Institute. Was around the mission-style burrito shops that you see in San Francisco today, where you can get a really quick burrito. The food's just not that great. Mm-hmm. And Steve was in culinary school, said, how do I bring this to use better ingredients, create a better eating experience for the consumer that's more palatable, at the speed at which you can't get anywhere else, at a price point at which you can't get anywhere else.
Right.
And so he always had this passion around animal husbandry practices, what's right for the environment, what's right for the farmer, and what's right for consumers in general. And he broke a trend that had started in this country back in World War II, when we were manufacturing food to feed soldiers scattered across a globe. And so that's where all the manufacturing processed ideas came from in the early days, and all the food that you see in the 7-Eleven. I hate to pick on 7-Eleven. It's a great company. Don't misunderstand that comment. That packaged processed food was born from necessity. And we stayed on that trend as a society in America for many, many years, where some of our Western European counterparts recognize that you shouldn't be eating processed packaged foods, not at the pace and scale at which we eat today. And so that's where Steve really grabbed that idea and said, how do I bring a better eating experience for the American consumer? And what he was trying to do in the early days is prove that eating a high quality, great tasting meal that's prepared with classic culinary techniques, which we still do to this day in every single restaurant, isn't an elitist pursuit. Meaning you don't have to have hundreds of dollars and go to a chef-driven restaurant to have a great meal. Let's do it at a price point under $10, and let's feed Americans real food.
Yeah, so talk about real food, clean food. How do you think customer demand for transparency and clean food will evolve in the next 5 to 10 years?
I think people are more conscientious of what they put in their bodies today than they were just 5 years ago.
Right.
And it's accelerating at a pretty quick pace. Thanks to modern medicine and folks that are leaning into things that cause problems within our bodies. I think people are better educated. I mean, gosh, you just think 20 years ago, people were still puffing on cigarettes in the back of restaurants.
Yeah.
And so you think of how far we've come in short order, the advancements we're making. I think this is how people should be eating. I think this is how people want to eat. I was with a shareholder this morning. We were talking through, what we do is so unique at Chipotle. We bring what I believe to be a mom and pop restaurant to life in 3,800 restaurants today, every single day.
Yeah.
When you go into one of our restaurants, in the back of our restaurant, you'll see boxes of romaine lettuce, bags of whole onions, bags of peppers, boxes of bell peppers, and you see pots, pans, knives, cutting boards, and stovetops. What you don't see are bags. What you don't see are microwaves, can openers, or freezers.
Right.
Full stop. It is a full kitchen that is operating at scale today, which we're really proud of.
So let's talk a little bit about the news you've been making lately, not just on your great stock, but how about the international expansion? Amazing to hear you guys are expanding in Mexico, of all places. Can you tell us a little bit about this recently signed agreement to open your first store in Mexico, how that decision came about, and what's the response been like?
Investors are confused.
Had to ask.
They want to know, are you going to call it Chipotle Mexican Grill in Mexico? I get that question almost weekly. We signed, today we own every restaurant in Canada, North America, Western Europe. So we are in Paris, London, and Frankfurt. We own, those are all equity owned. We have one partnership we signed with Al Shaya Group in the Middle East. So we are now open in Kuwait and Dubai. We'll open up Qatar and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia this upcoming year. This opportunity with Al Shaya in Mexico is a group just like Al Shaya. They have a proven track record of bringing American brands into these regions and operating at a really high level. And so they both, Al Shaya and Al Shaya, different companies, sound similar. Both are operating cheesecake factories, Starbucks, Cane's. So they have a proven track record of opening successful and are great operators, because we won't sacrifice, even through partnership, the quality of the ethos of our brand or our animal husbandry practices.
So is international big on a priority list for you, just continuing to expand internationally?
So back to that conversation around layers of growth in the out years, and years 7 through 20, we're going to have proven that the brand works in any country of origin around the country. And at the core of the menu, it's rice, beans, and chicken. And in every geography and every point of this globe, people are eating rice, beans, and chicken. So we have a lot of confidence that the brand's going to work well anywhere we go.
Let's talk a little bit about culture and community impact. So Chipotle is not just known for its food, but for its culture, like we talked about at the beginning. How do you preserve that culture as the company scales to being so big? I mean, you talk about mom and pop, but how do you do that at this kind of scale?
I just think you stay true to your purpose and stay true to your brand. Our support center here, we have, Aaron, keep me honest here, we have about 500-600 employees at the 610 building here in Fashion Island. We have another office in Columbus, Ohio on the other side of the country where we run back-end IT, we run accounts payable, and some other consumer-facing activity there. But everyone, it's a lean and nimble team, and everyone is committed to this idea of customer service. And everyone in the support center understands that their customer is the team member in the restaurant.
Right.
Every team member knows that their customer is any individual that walks in and wants to share their hard-earned dollars with our great brand. And so that keeps us very grounded in how we approach the business. And one of the things we're doing in our conference room back in our office here in Newport is all the chairs are black except for two. We're putting in 2 red chairs at the end of the table. One red chair represents the consumer, one red chair represents the team members in our restaurants. Because we are making decisions in that room about 2 constituents that aren't represented in the room. And it's symbolic, but I think it's important. And as long as you keep your eye on what's most critical and what's most important to your brand, and focus on execution full stop, you'll be successful.
Tell us a little bit about community initiatives. To Kevin and I, it's very important, the give back and engaging partners like Big Brothers. What community initiatives or employee programs are you particularly proud of?
Several. So we do Roundup for Real Change. Every month we change the Roundup for Real Change. We generate, we pull in just around, I think it's 50,000, maybe 100,000 per week in our Roundup program, which we give back to young farmers. The challenge for us today is banks don't lend to farmers that don't do conventional farming because they don't know how to get a return on the investment, right? So pigs are raised in gestation crates. Gestation crates, we believe, are inhumane and shouldn't be used. So we raise our pigs in naturally deeply bedded pens out in fields. And so we have a saying around Chipotle, our animals only have one bad day.
Right.
That's a pretty bad day, granted.
Horrible day.
Our animals only have one bad day. And so those farmers can't go to the bank and say, I've got 10 gestation crates, here's how many times I can turn those over, and here's how I can return a profit. And so they don't lend to them. And so young farmers, and also important, the average age of a farmer in America today is 56 years old. And we're losing 2 to 3 times more annually than are coming in. At some point, we're going to have to ask ourselves, who's going to grow the food?
Right.
And so we're investing with farmers, we're co-investing in our supply chain, albeit self-serving, I understand that completely, but we know it's the right way to grow food, the right way to raise animals, and we're going to run out of those opportunities if we don't co-invest and continue to push their development. The second thing,
okay, go ahead, please. Yeah.
The second thing is Big Brothers Big Sisters is a national group that we support on the national level. And so Artis Stevens is a dear friend of mine. He's the CEO of Big Brothers Big Sisters North America. And so we do a roundup for them as well. And we co-partner in the communities in which we operate to give littles an opportunity to join our great brand. We have, I believe, to be industry-leading benefits. And you can come to Chipotle today and free of charge, you can have over 100 degrees from 10 different universities fully paid for by Chipotle.
That's amazing.
And so we go into communities like inner city Philly. If you haven't been in inner city Philly in a long time, it's economically challenged. It's a tough market. We're promoting programs with KB Foundation there, with Big Brothers Big Sisters, to get these kids in an opportunity. Mentorship is what they need most. Yeah. To get them in an opportunity, teach them, how do you interview for a job? Teach them, we expose them to all sorts of industry to figure out what they're passionate about and how they can find an opportunity for themselves personally. Next, another one I'm deeply passionate about is this idea around childhood hunger. And so we partner with a group called Share Our Strength out of DC. It's operated by a guy named Billy Shore who started it many years ago. The campaign is called No Kid Hungry. And so 1 in 4 children in America today are food insecure, meaning they do not know where their next meal is coming from. And so absent food activation programs like SNAP or programs where we do feeding in summer, because summer is when families are most at risk, because the free or reduced lunch at school goes away for 5 days.
Right.
And so summer feeding sites, summer feeding programs, and Billy and I share the same sentiment that we can't have a strong America with weak children. And so if we don't invest, because kids that are hungry, they're not learning. You can't focus on a class lecture if you're thinking about, where's my next meal going to come from, or I'm hungry. So they don't learn, they don't develop, they can't play. And so it's a real problem in America today that we're trying to solve.
So as the Chief Executive Officer, how do you measure impact beyond profits, whether it's food sourcing, employee well-being, or customer loyalty?
So we have sustainability goals as an organization that's tied to executive compensation, whether that's reducing greenhouse gas emissions, whether that's buying more organic produce that comes into our system. how we think about overall emissions in the organization. Can we move more of our restaurants to electric versus gas, which is a huge effort when we're leaning into. So there are many different ways where we're thinking about the communities in which we serve to be better corporate citizens.
So I'm going to encourage all of you to think of a really good question, because I'm going to call on you in just a moment as we round up this interview. In my last question to you, Scott, on the personal side, outside of the suit and reflection, what does a typical day look like for you, and how do you stay grounded around this incredible ride you're on?
Great question. So my days start at 5 a.m. Every morning. The alarm bell goes off. I'm typically in the gym by 5:30. I have a 4.5-year-old, and you're probably thinking, why does this old guy have a 4-year-old at home? I have a wife of 20 years. We were not going to have kids, and we decided pretty late in life, and God blessed us with an amazing young man. That's important context, because my son gets up at 7 a.m. I get the gym and showered out of the way, and I spend the first hour of his morning with him every day that I'm not traveling. It's really important to me, and I block out everything is not important. 7 to 8 a.m. when I'm home, it's he and I. And at the end of the day, days typically wind down around 6 o'clock. I spend the last part of his day with him. And so we have dinner together, we play together, enjoy the evening, and I typically get to put him to bed when I'm not traveling. So those are important moments for me. But by the time 8 p.m., 8:30 rolls around, I'm pretty wiped and ready for bed. And so I'm in bed probably around 9:30. Sound like I'm a 75-year-old.
Looks great. If you could give your younger self one piece of advice, what would that be, looking back?
Never miss the importance of education. I didn't go to business school until I was 42. And a funny story, my wife was getting her master's. She was environmental sciences major in undergrad and at Denison in Ohio, and was struggling to find work, imagine that. And great cause, I love the idea, it's just hard to find work in that field today. Decided to go back and get her master's degree in health sciences to be a dietitian. And so at the time, I was living in Atlanta, and I was coming home at like 5 or 6 o'clock at night, and my wife would be in a study group or working on a quiz or working on an exam, and I was watching Seinfeld reruns. And so I thought, this is silly. I'll go get my master's. And so I ended up back in business school. And it's funny, I shared this story today, as a matter of fact. I thought I had business all figured out. I was like, I don't know, they're not going to teach me anything, but I'll do it because I'll probably be teaching the class at some point. And God, boy, was I wrong. You can learn a lot. And so I'd say focus on education, be intellectually curious, ask great questions, and be curious with humility, right? There's two ways to approach that. Be curious with humility, not arrogance. I think that's important. Be prepared. Yeah. Be prepared, full stop, because you never know what's coming your way. And most often people are blindsided or knocked off their game because they're not prepared. Right. And so prepare in every aspect of your life, prepare in every aspect of your business. The pace of disruption in the modern world today is happening faster than ever. And there's no such thing any longer as a 10-year strategic plan. It is not worth the paper it's written on. Yeah. It will change and evolve 5 times by the time you get to 10 years. And so write 3 5-year plans. Maybe you can get it to 5, if you can, if you're pushing really hard and you don't have a global pandemic or a recession, or I can keep going down the list. But prepare for those moments. Today, I read a book many years ago that said, dig your well before you're thirsty. And so I think that's applicable today, probably more so than ever. And so be prepared. Awesome. Well, Scott, thank you so much. I'm going to open this up. Kevin, if you could just say your name and then just do your question loud because we're recording.
Kevin, it feels like I work for Sinan. Scott, you look great for 75. By the way, a lot of us were born on third base in the United States, in California, Southern California, Newport Beach. So thank you for giving back. Sinan always say, if you have the ability, you have the responsibility.
Agreed.
Great job on that. 2 quick questions.
Sure.
What has DoorDash and other apps like that done for your business? And number 2, it doesn't matter the order, is food safety. Can you talk to us about supply chain, food safety, and how you hold them accountable? Because that can crush your brand quickly and your market cap. Certainly. I'll answer the third-party aggregator first. We first partnered in a sole deal with Tony at DoorDash, and we built these businesses together. And so I think it's important to note it's symbiotic. And Tony's company needs my brand to keep his drivers moving. And so we $4 billion business in digital. Right. We keep his drivers on the road. And so trying to find ways that we can both drive economic value in our companies has been critically important, especially as third-party aggregators have struggled to make money. Right? They got tons of funding, but they're struggling to make cash. And so trying to find the right balance without passing all those costs off to the consumer and creating an untenable situation from a consumer perspective has been a challenge. Same thing at DoorDash. And so expanding access in this idea, because expanding access is it's our 5th strategic priority as a brand, is how do we find ways to meet the consumer where they are.
And so if I can give you a frictionless experience in my white label, where you just click, open up white label, you hit last order, and someone brings it to your door, I think it's about as easy as it gets. Last question was?
About supply
Food
chain.
safety.
Yeah.
So the original food safety problems at Chipotle started in supply chain because we had unsophisticated people running supply chain. And so they were making decisions that were unorthodox about how you bring supply into the country. And so we solved that pretty quickly. That's easy. Creating a food safety culture in the business is a very different conversation. It took years. And I tell you today, Chipotle, and we benchmark against every brand in the nation, is the safest restaurant, full stop, either by third-party auditors or local health department inspections, and we monitor all of them. We are the safest restaurant, full stop, in the industry.
That's awesome. I think my kids are 1 billion of the 4 billion.
I love it.
Tim?
I'm going to challenge you, Kevin. I think I'm the other one.
Tim?
Yeah. My question is, you talked about there's like a really fast-paced awareness of what we're putting in our bodies, like the consciousness of our nation and culture is just going really fast. Do you see the fast food industry in the other styles of food, some of the legacy brands changing to your model, or do you think that is a big market for somebody like Chipotle or Chipotle to enter those style of foods and change things?
Great question. So the emerging brands are doing just that. So think Sweetgreen, Kava, they're smaller, they're nimble, they're still agile, they're still finding their way in the world. The bigger brands that are entrenched have an economic model that can't support 300, 400, 500 basis points of additional margin to source food the way we source food. And so I think it's problematic for them. I don't know how you make a pivot and go tell a franchisee,
Right.
if you're McDonald's, we're going to start buying all organic food and it's going to cost you 300 basis points of margin.
Not gonna
The
work.
franchisee is going to tell them to go fly a kite.
Yes, Jessica.
So California recently passed a law to allow cultivated meat. Are you guys considering that? And do you know what cultivated meat is?
I'm not sure I do. Please tell me.
So it's where you are basically allowed to grow meat in a lab, but it's done very cleanly because it's done just based on cell division. So there's no hormones, there's nothing, it takes away any type of greenhouse gas. And like even Chef Jose Andres is using that in one of his Michelin restaurants. He's using cultivated chicken now.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's something we should probably look into. Everything we've seen from genetically modified meats that has been produced to this point just has tons of chemical.
Right.
Tons of chemical. So, I share that with you as a PSA. Be careful what you're eating if you're eating synthetic meat, because just read the labels. Read the labels.
I think you had a question, ma'am.
Well, I know your business model is evolving, but I just wondered if it was based on something and have you stayed true to that?
We have stayed,
Or-
and it's critically important for us. And so I'll give you one example. So our romaine lettuce is cut from the field. It goes in a box. That box shows up at my restaurant. There's no further processing. And why I share that with you is in a restaurant today, there's 5 or 6 boxes that are pulled out. The heads of lettuce are washed, they're cut, they're washed, and dried yet again. It's 5-6 hours every single restaurant. People have been putting lettuce in bags for 20 years. You can buy it at any grocery you go into today. Every time I've tried to remove that process from the restaurant and bring in a partner to replicate what we do, it has a chemical taste or an off-gassing taste, and it's terrible. It never stands up to the quality which we serve. And so I will never compromise on the quality of the ingredients at Chipotle, full stop, no questions asked.
Random question. What's
Yep.
your favorite thing to eat at Chipotle?
I eat all around the menu. Most often it's black beans, chicken, tomato sauce. Our pico de gallo is world class. Hot sauce and cheese.
Yes, Hamed.
What's your biggest fear as a CEO?
At present, a recession. You know, I think at the end of the day, is having enough people in the workforce that are available to support the brand as we continue, as we double in North America and then double yet again outside the United States. I think you know, boomers are aging out. People are having less children today than they were. The kids we're raising in this room today probably aren't going to be team members at Chipotle, right? And so, you know, where's the workforce going to come from? If we don't, absent immigration reform, I don't know where we're going to get some of the work done that we have to get done in this country, whether that's in agriculture, development, construction, or restaurants. And so it's a concern.
Yes.
What advice would you give to Gwyneth Paltrow? She asked you about her Goop kitchen, that she's trying to bring, I guess, organic food to the dinner table, kind of like Chipotle, but through a delivery service. And it's, you know, quality food that's not people want. So I know she's scaled a little bit, but I heard her on a podcast recently saying she does want to scale everywhere.
Yeah, and that's obviously personal preference, and she probably wants to control the brand, keep it super tight, and not give it to a franchisee who may not share her interests or her ethos around food and how it should be eaten.
So there's a stereotype within tech that operational excellence and visionary leadership can't come from the same person. How do you do both, and how do you respond to people that take that?
Yeah, I would first tell you, how do you do both is you surround yourself with really smart people. Everyone gives the CEO credit for everything that goes right, and oftentimes the blame for everything that goes wrong. Most innovation doesn't happen from the CEO. It happens deeper in the organization. I have a saying around our company that the answers are in the restaurants. And so we oftentimes sit around the boardroom and we hypothesize on what the problem is, and then we gen up solutions for a problem we haven't even accurately identified. Mm-hmm. And so anytime I have an issue in our brand, I go get in the restaurants and I talk to my team members. Is this a problem? What kind of problem is it? How do we identify it? How do we solve for it? And then we go create solutions to solve that problem, oftentimes leveraging innovation or technology to fix the problem. We always lean into, as leaders in a company, I say always, most often we think it's a human capability issue, when oftentimes it's a complication that needs to be removed from the business, or a pain point. I said this earlier today with someone else. The most underrated intervention in business today is the removal of complexity. How do you remove some of the complex jobs, leveraging technology, AI, innovation, to unleash human capability, human capacity? And we always think we got to push harder, hammer harder, push the team member harder. That's where we always go because it's easy. And bad things occur when you do that.
We're going to end with, oh, go ahead, 2 more questions and then we'll get started.
I didn't answer his second question,
Yeah.
I don't think. And so that was, how do you do both, or what do you say to people that say it's hard to do? Look at the results. That's what I would say.
2 more questions, James? And then we'll end with you, sir. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I was going to pay you a compliment. You have really great people working for you.
Thank you.
We've been fortunate enough to pick a few of them off.
And we support our team members wherever they go for as long as and we'll always welcome them back. So we're not a company that holds people back from opportunity.
Great people. How do you promote from within? What do you look for as you're looking levels down within the organization? What key attributes would you look for when you're trying to bring somebody up?
You know, it's a great question. So we have promotion rate at Chipotle today is 90% internal. And so we promoted 26,000 people last year alone. And so we bring in purpose-driven people that are like-minded, that have the similar value set that we have. So we start in the very beginning with what we believe to be a winning strategy. And then we look for folks that have a willingness or an appetite to help support and develop others. Right? It's that team member that's helping out a teammate. It's that team member that's raising their hand because they want to learn more. They're asking for additional opportunity. And that happens, and they're able to see it at Chipotle because the rate of growth and development is such that they see their peers getting promoted. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I did when I first joined the brand is I put the career roadmap on the wall of every restaurant, and I put ranges of compensation for every single one of those positions. Mm. And so you can go from an hourly team member to Chipotle today, and within 3.5 years, you'll be making over $100,000 annually. I have 5 of my 11 region leaders today that are making they're making 7-figure incomes. And these are folks without advanced education or advanced degrees. These are people that are just hardworking, committed, willing to put in the work, and that are intellectually curious.
Yeah. Last question. Yes, sir.
Yeah, my name's Ryan Kelly. We love the guacamole and the kids' meals.
Thanks, pal.
Does someone like you get a tip-off when your old boss gets recruited to a new public firm?
No.
Right? It's like day of. You're learning.
And Brian's still a dear friend of mine, and we actually work out at the same gym together still. So every Monday morning, we still play golf together.
Imagine that.
We've been friends a long time. You know, Brian was looking for a challenge, and God knows he found one. And he had gotten a little bored. You know, we have an extraordinary team that is generating outsized performance within the industry year after year. You just get a little bored. And he knew he had another turn in him, and so he didn't know if he wanted to wait a few more years and then go after one more turn. So the Starbucks opportunity actually came to him before Lakshman came in. And he couldn't get to the terms of his agreement in the right place, and I won't disclose what that is. So he passed on that opportunity, and when Lakshman stepped away this last time, they came back to him and said, we'll agree to all of them. And so
that's awesome.
We got the
continued success to him.
He's going to do great there.
You know, just a closing note, Scott, this moment I've been looking forward to since the moment I met you. I knew I was going to somehow wrangle you up to the stage and have this interview with me. It's been an absolute honor and pleasure. You know, of the hundreds of interviews I've done, it's very few times my mother-in-law, my wife, my children all leaned in, excited, and had an opinion, right? Like, ask them this, do that. The brand hits generations, and we are all here to support you and continued success. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Scott.
Thank you,
Boatwright.
guys.